Imagine a world where the usual power dynamics are really being shaken up, where regions maybe once seen in a certain light are now, well, forging their own path, shared prosperity, dignity. That's the kind of electrifying energy we're diving into today. We're taking a deep dive into the recent African Union, the AU, and Caribbean Community CARICOM Summit. And look, this wasn't just, another meeting. It felt pretty pivotal. A big step towards a real transcontinental partnership. We've got our hands on some fascinating stuff here, transcripts from key speeches. We're talking the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, the PM of St. Kitts and Nevis, who's also the incoming CARICOM chair, and the President of Angola, the AU chairperson. So our mission today, let's unpack this, the big vision, the actual plans, the history behind it all, give you a shortcut, really, to understanding why this actually matters globally. As we start digging in, what jumps out at you first? This whole idea of new voices, redefining alliances.
What hits me right away is the sheer sense of agency. You hear from the CARICOM Secretary General, and the Ethiopian PM echoed it too. This collective decision, and I'm quoting here, to free ourselves from the language of charity, of recovery, of being called developing. That's powerful. It's rejecting those old labels, isn't it? Aiming to rise into something new, where the very waters that separated them now unite them. In dignity and prosperity, it's more than just trade talk. It feels like a declaration of self-determination.
Yeah, freeing ourselves from the language of charity, that phrase just lands, doesn't it? Really sets the tone. And speaking of tone, the welcome from the Ethiopian Prime Minister in Addis Ababa was quite something. He called Ethiopia a land where history lives and the future takes root. And he brought up the victory of Adwa, that historical touchstone, emphasizing it was won not by force, but by courage, not by empire, but by unity. And this spirit, he connects it to what he calls Madmer synergy, which sounds like, well, the strength you get when heads, hands, and hearts work as one, turning ideas into real change through connection, culture, innovation, all of it. A deep vision of collective power.
It absolutely is. And that historical resonance, it's just crucial here. You can't separate it. What I found really moving was the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, speaking for CARICOM. He talked about this realization landing in Ethiopia that Caribbean history, their history, didn't start 400 years ago with the slave trade, but that they're connected right back to the cradle of civilization, to Africa, to Ethiopia.
Wow.
It deepens the whole thing, you see. It's not just about getting past a painful history. It's about embracing a shared ancient heritage. He even brought up the Rastafari community in the Caribbean, how they've long asked for this connection to be forged. Adds another layer, right? History, culture.
It's quite something how reframing history like that changes the whole story. It's a much deeper connection than just, overcoming shared trauma. Like you said, reaching back to a shared identity that existed before all the exploitation narratives. It really invites you, the listener, to think about how intertwined these places are, maybe in ways we haven't fully appreciated based on standard histories.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that reclaiming of identity, that foundational piece, it naturally leads to the question, okay, so why now? And all the speakers were clear on this. The world is changing. In this new era, they can't just speak individually in fragments. They have to speak as one. Think about the global challenges, climate change, but also debt, food security, energy issues, geopolitical instability, all these external economic pressures hitting the global south hard, especially Africa and the Caribbean. That shared vulnerability, it's a powerful driver for unity.
So it's practical then, not just aspirational unity, but a real need born out of these massive global pressures. And they're aligned on demanding inclusive growth powered by innovation. And this seems key, a stronger collective voice in global governance. The president of Angola was very direct. Called for reform of the international financial architecture, reform of the UN, especially the Security Council, arguing these institutions need to reflect the reality of today's world, need to represent the excluded people, Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, Asia, Middle East. That's a major call for systemic change.
It's a fundamental challenge, no question, to the status quo. Shows how they see their role evolving.
Yeah.
But maybe the most potent theme, the one that kept coming up, and the summit's theme itself points to it, transcontinental partnership in pursuit of reparatory justice.
Right.
Reparations, justice, that was central. The Angolan president specifically highlighted that the AU has named 2025 the Year of Justice for people of Africa and African descent through reparations. That signals a really unified front on this fight.
Wow, dedicating a whole year to reparatory justice. That is a statement. But thinking practically, what are the hurdles? Moving something that ambitious forward globally, even with this united front, politically, legally, it must be complex.
Oh, hugely complex, no doubt. You need internal agreement on what reparations even look like, right?
Yeah.
Is it financial, land, education,
Hmm.
cultural restitution. And then you have to navigate international law,
Yep.
push back against resistance from nations that benefited historically. But, and this is the shift, having the AU and CARICOM speak with one voice, it changes the conversation. It's not just individual claims anymore. It's a powerful bloc demanding recognition of a shared moral and historical debt. Harder to just brush aside. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? What does it mean when these voices, historically pushed to the margins, collectively demand we reevaluate the whole global system? It impacts everyone, the structure of international relations, justice itself.
It really does signal a new kind of power dynamic trying to emerge. And they're not just talking vision, they've got concrete ideas for cooperation. The Ethiopian PM laid out these 4 bricks of unity. What are those about?
Right, the bricks of unity. They're meant to be practical building blocks for impact. First one is agriculture and digital innovation. So things like climate-smart farming, tropical crop research, resilient food systems, but also digital platforms, AI, e-learning, renewable energy, and farming. Second, innovation and collaboration, creating hubs for entrepreneurs, digital infrastructure, research links between startups and universities, plus making it easier to actually do this stuff, easier visas, better transport links.
Okay, so practical support for connection.
Exactly. Third is culture and leadership. More youth exchanges, leadership programs, strengthening cultural ties, seeing culture not just as symbolic, but as an engine of identity, innovation, and opportunity.
Mhm.
And finally, knowledge and health. Building research networks, think tropical medicine, marine ecosystems, climate challenges, using their collective knowledge to solve shared problems.
That sounds incredibly thorough, covering everything from food on the table to empowering the next generation. It really does feel like they're thinking about making this work in the real world, not just on paper.
And you see that practical focus echoed from the Caribbean side, too. The CARICOM chair used this powerful image, turning the transatlantic slave trade route into an Atlantic bridge. A bridge of hope, of advancement. And again, not just words. He stressed better transport links, letting people travel freely, boosting trade and investment, building on those existing ties, cultural, historical, economic, and we're already seeing action, like the African Exim Bank operating in the Caribbean now. The Angolan president pointed that out, opening new opportunities for commerce and investment. That's a tangible financial bridge right there.
Turning that history into future connection. That's a powerful reframe. And the range of cooperation they listed is just huge. The Angolan president mentioned a specific memorandum of understanding from September 2024 covering trade, transport, education, science, culture, mutual support, and the PM from St. Kitts and Nevis. His list was even longer. Reparations, multilateral cooperation, financial architecture reform, debt, finance, education, health, climate, youth, digital transformation, AI, trade, transport, tourism, cultural exchanges. I mean, wow, are they missing anything?
It certainly feels like they're aiming for a truly holistic partnership, covering all the bases. And this whole spirit of self-reliance, it's not just talk for them. The Ethiopian PM gave a really potent example from Ethiopia itself, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. He called it proof of their strength when united, said it was born in the heart of millions, funded by our own people, built through their labor and sacrifice. That's a model, isn't it? Of collective effort, using internal resources, showcasing the kind of thing this bigger AU-CARICOM alliance might aim for. Self-determination in action.
That's a strong symbol, yeah. Leveraging their own strengths. But, okay, turning all this vision, these lists into reality, how do they actually plan to do it? What are the mechanisms?
Right, the how. That's crucial. The Angolan president laid out some specifics. First, a technical subcommittee. This would bring together reps from both AU and CARICOM, specialists, ministers, partners, civil society, the private sector, everyone. Their job. Focus on strategic common interests, come up with concrete investment proposals, things like vaccine production, agricultural innovation.
So getting the experts and stakeholders together to hammer out details makes sense.
Then he proposed institutionalizing a youth council, making it a permanent consultative body for both AU and CARICOM, ensuring the next generation has a real voice in building this future. Also, committing to reviewing visa regimes, making it easier for people to actually travel and connect between the regions, needs public-private support, he noted. And then, more immediate steps. Quickly set up a joint platform for media communication and sign multilateral agreements on air transport services. Practical stuff to get things moving, improve communication, facilitate travel.
Okay, so institutional bridges, youth involvement, practical steps like visas and transport deals seems pretty comprehensive. And zooming out again, the Angolan president wrapped up by stressing the need for African and Caribbean states to jointly defend multilateralism. A multilateralism that can actually handle today's challenges: peace, security, climate, development. He also specifically expressed solidarity with the people of Palestine, acknowledging their suffering, advocating for a two-state solution. So a broader vision for global peace and dignity, too.
It really flips the script, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This whole approach from farming techniques to UN reform to global solidarity, it just completely undermines that old idea of these regions as just aid recipients. It positions them as active architects of a new global order. Demanding justice, yes, but also contributing solutions. So they're not just asking for a seat at the table, they're trying to redesign the table itself, asserting their sovereignty, their influence collectively.
And that brings us towards the end of our deep dive for today.
Huh.
We've really seen how this AU CARICOM summit is more than just a meeting. It feels like a declaration, a new chapter. It's about reclaiming identity, demanding justice, and forging genuinely new paths for development for global influence through working together. From that idea of Madmer synergy and Ethiopia's bricks of unity to the Caribbean's Atlantic Bridge vision, you see them laying groundwork for a future based on shared dignity, purposeful action.
Yeah, you've really gotten an inside look here at the hopes, but also the concrete plans of a partnership trying to reshape not just their own regions, but potentially global dynamics too. Hopefully you feel you've got insights now that go, beyond the headlines.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. As Africa and the Caribbean build this unprecedented unity, as they push for self-reliance and demand reform of global institutions, what could the long-term impact be on the global balance of power? And maybe, how could this inspire other regions to think differently about their own futures, their own destinies? Something to mull over. We'll be back with another deep dive soon.